Now, at McDonald's, wake up to a $4 breakfast meal deal. Wake up to a sausage McMuffin or a sausage biscuit, to hash browns, and wake up to a hot coffee. Get your $4 breakfast meal deal.
Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher for delivery.
I'm honored to make history and to make my community proud.
Oh, what a brilliant tackle from Naomi Kerner.
What would you like the power to do?
Bank of America, proud to be the official bank of U.S. Soccer.
Bank of America N.A., member FDIC.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast with your hosts, Kyle Borganoni and Matthew Betz.
Welcome in. We are back on the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni, and I am joined, as always, by Matthew. He also likes to break a mental sweat, Betz.
Is that what you would call this, Kyle? A mental sweat? I mean, it's also physical at the same time. Not sweating, but the carpal tunnel syndrome that I have developed over the last 2 weeks writing this article is very real. My fingers are sore, man. I'm tired. My eyes are going cross-eyed from looking at the screen so much. I feel like you in the middle of summer because you don't go outside. You know, you just sit in here and you're charting spreadsheets and conditionally formatting and targets per route run against cover 3 on Thursday Night Football. I mean, I feel like you. And it's not a life I like, man. Like, going outside is kind of nice. But, man, this article is a beast. I write it every year. I'm excited to break it down, get into it. And then when I'm in it, I actually learn a lot. Like, you have your takes and you have your things that you think you want to be higher or lower on the market. As you get into like May and June, then July gets here and we have training camps right around the corner. And it's time to like actually get some information on some of these ambiguous running back rooms, wide receiver rooms, and, hopefully we get information over the next month. I was thinking about that. I was going through the article. It's like, we think we're going to get the definitive, this is the RB2. This is how the backfield split will go. Most of the time, we don't actually get that information. We might get signals based off of preseason usage or beat reports or what have you. But a lot of this is data-driven, which I know is right up your alley. So I'm excited to hopefully learn something today, and hopefully people do too.
We will work through a number of different topics and questions from Betz's giant article that will be on the website. It will be. Training camp storylines. You've written this every single year. And I just think you and I, what we enjoy doing the most on this podcast, Dynasty Podcast, is breaking down the ecosystems and how things have changed for teams, the schemes. And I think a lot of times that stuff does travel when you consider that over half the league every year basically changes their offensive system, or at least their offensive coordinator. And then there are things that are just over time in the NFL, you have to adjust. So you and I have been talking over the years about, well, here's what we're seeing in zone coverage. It's happening 70% of the time. So is the NFL. They're noticing that, and they've kind of had this adjustment over the last couple of years, and you're seeing the adjustment where you're seeing a lot more 12 and 13 personnel, and defenses have to adjust, in how they do it. So I like that conversation. And then we're going to try to give the takeaway for best ball. So it's one thing to talk ball. It's another thing to say, are we going to help people win money?
That's what we're here for, Kyle. I mean, nobody cares about coming in fourth place, okay? You ain't first or last.
Yeah, not in best ball. Now, in your redraft league, if you make the playoffs, congratulations. That's cool.
Get into the dance. Anything can happen. Anything can happen once you get in.
I do have a fun little trivia thought for you because we just crossed a giant threshold. Did you feel it?
I felt nothing.
Okay, because we just hit days until kickoff.
Let's go.
1.
Man, it sneaks up on you every year, doesn't it?
It does, because we're starting on a Wednesday this year. So maybe that's why it feels even closer than ever.
Do we have WednesdayNightFootball.com?
I'm pretty sure our company does. I will Google it right now. WednesdayNightFootball.com. And that directs me to, nope, we don't have it.
Yeah, we'll get that on with corporate. We'll figure it out. I kind of forget that the NFL starts sooner and sooner. And I also forgot, now that you're talking about the weird scheduling, that basically Thanksgiving is gone. Christmas is gone. Black Friday is gone. Like the NFL is just, they're wild with their scheduling, man. But that's what we do. Here we are.
Yeah, that'll be a Seahawks and Patriots game that a month from now, you and I will be previewing that game for Showdown. So that we've got like right around the corner, we will turn the page, start talking DFS, start talking weekly props, a lot of fun stuff. So I'm looking at everything that we've done over the summer so far, our best ball rankings, best ball primer. We just had a couple of updates to the Ultimate Draft Kit, including a mock draft tool, which is live now if you want to mock draft against your buddies. And if you want everything we do, ultimatedraftkit.com. I try not to give a salesy pitch, because corporate, they're on your back. I know that you got a note the other day that says, why are you not selling more UDK's door-to-door bets? And I feel like you could up that part of your game, but I do want to say that everything we do, we never up the price. And it's like something that 5 or 6 years in, it's now turned from a joke to maybe there's something seriously wrong with Andy, Mike, and Jason. Like maybe this is the time for us to send a nurse to the house and do a little house call check.
Speaking of going door to door, you live in a neighborhood, correct?
Oh, great neighborhood.
Great neighborhood. Dude, I don't know. Like the last 2 years, we've had way more solicitors come to our door trying to sell. I mean, it's mostly internet upgrades and, we're checking roofs in your neighborhood. You want a roof check? Stuff like that. With new windows in your neighbors. You guys want more windows? Next time somebody comes to my door, I'm going to be like, you know what? Why don't you hold on a second? Do you want an Ultimate Draft Kit? You need an Ultimate Draft Kit. Let me show you. I'll whip up my phone and show them the app. I mean, corporate's going to be thrilled.
That would be really, really good. I would consider myself a kind person. I think most people find me approachable, but there are a few things in life where I turn it on more than if someone rings my doorbell that I did not ask. And I quickly say, this is my line, okay, Betz? I say, I don't care what you're about to tell me. There is no way you're going to talk me into anything you're going to sell. I appreciate what you do. I appreciate the hustle, but no thank you. They don't even get a word out.
Yeah, the worst thing you can do, I think, and this is obviously what people tune into the show for today, is if you let them do their full spiel, their full thing, and here's what we're offering, yada, 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 and then at the end, you're like, listen, man, I'm not interested. I mean, you just wasted your own 15, 20 seconds, their 15, 20 seconds. I mean, think about that over the course of your lifetime. That adds up, Kyle. So you're right. Cut them off early, get it done with, close the door, and let's move on. Yeah,
a preemptive strike is what you need. And then sometimes we used to in Arizona have a sign where it just said no solicitors, and I would just point to the sign, tap it. Just tap it over and over and over again.
Kyle is the angry man outside yelling at the crowd.
Can't. We have no soliciting in our neighborhood, and so I just don't. I don't like that at all. Also, fun little tease here. Next week we will have a special best ball episode, a DraftKings specific episode that Betz will be doing with our own Chris Cash, who I know a lot of you get to talk with in the Discord. I will be out of town in Vegas doing my thing. And I did find this fun little thing. My wife and I will be at the Backstreet Boys show at the Sphere. And she sends me this photo today because Nick Carter, one of the Backstreet Boys, was wearing the same King Griffey Jr. shirt that I was wearing the other day.
Maybe you should wear that shirt to the concert. See if you can spot it in the crowd.
Well, I don't know if it'll match the rest of my outfit when I'm all white with my frosted tips and my hair.
Obviously.
Yeah. That's the goal. But yeah, so next week, special episode should be really, really good. But let's jump into this beast.
Preseason Power Up.
We don't get to use this drop at all in the DFS pod. And so I thought we could do a little crossover here to talk about preseason, or at least training camp and as things move into preseason. I thought it was really, really pertinent, timely. But you've written an article called 32 Fantasy Football Storylines to Monitor in Training Camp for 2026. So we're going to kind of go through a couple of teams, the most specific ones, and pause on them. But really quickly, before we do that, what are you looking for team by team when it comes to training camp? Because there's so many different things we can talk about. On the main show, we've highlighted every single division. But what are the things that you're most interested in topic-wise?
I'm going to be 100% honest with you. Much like you with the solicitors that come to your door, that are about to give you your spiel, you just cut them off and you're done. I really don't care about beat reporters' opinions of performance. Like, you'll see beat reporters charting completion percentage for a quarterback in 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s, and they thought the ball had nice zip down the field. Like, that does not matter at all, literally at all. I care about usage notes, like, hey, this guy is getting the first rep at running back routinely. You know, we're going to talk about a lot of running backs today and a lot of ambiguous situations. I care about that. I care about player health trends, right? So, like, we need to figure out what's going on with Neighbors and George Kittle and Zach Charbonnet and a bunch of these guys, Tucker Kraft. You know, like, we need to get like real data, like how far into your rehab are you? What are you doing on the field? If there's video, that's super helpful. But yeah, opinions I don't care about. They don't really matter, right? Like, it's fine to have an opinion. It's fine to share thoughts. I'm not saying these guys shouldn't do it, but for our game, like, that doesn't really matter much at all, right? The other thing that I will say is be careful of the headlines that you see. Like, you mentioned this before. This guy's running with the ones, and you people take that headline and they just go with it. And what I was saying earlier is, like, I want to see the consistency trend. Not this guy ran with the ones today because the starting running back was out for maintenance, you know, stuff like that. So just be careful. I think the training camp stuff, we used to not pay attention to it enough. And now I think people sometimes pay attention to it way too much and we overanalyze it. So I want to preface that with what I'm about to say in this article and everything. But I do think it's valuable. I just think sometimes we jump the shark.
Yeah, and I think everybody tries to do everyone's job in this business. So the team reporter should literally report, here's what happened. They don't have to give a spin on it. They should give like a talent evaluation. Like, I'm not asking for this person's evaluation of if this player is really good. Like, one of my favorite ones is a couple years ago with the Giants, where it was like Darren Waller. Nobody moves like this guy. I've never seen anybody move on the field. It's like, okay, like, Darren Waller is definitely different as a tight end. He looks different than anybody else. And he's also in shorts. And you are a reporter. You are literally just telling me what happens. You should not tell me, you know, a talent evaluation of what you think this player's doing. There's also an issue with beat reporters in giving usage thoughts of, a lot of times it's like extrapolating what they saw last year, and so they end up doing the work of a statistician. Our job is to kind of filter through all that stuff and then figure out what's most actionable. So you can find from the statistician, you can find them from the beat reporter, you should probably hear it from the coaches. All of those things matter, but we end up like double and triple counting all of them, and the input of information right now in training camp ends up being like, I have 10 things when they're just like, maybe 1.5 actionable things for this team.
That's for sure. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
All right, let's start off with this first one. This first category is team level thoughts, questions, concerns. And I first want to start with the New Orleans Saints. A team that you and I have talked about, I would say a fair amount. Maybe they're not the most publicized team. We've always been huge fans of Kellen Moore and the pace of play, the work in the slot. We've always loved that stuff. But the first question I have for you is, can Tyler Shuck, their second-year quarterback, can he take a step forward this year?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are counting on that to happen, as if it's certainly going to happen. And I'm not going to lie, because of my best ball exposures, I hope this does happen. You know, we've talked about the Saints a lot. They've got one of the easiest schedules in the league. You mentioned Kellen Moore. We're huge fans of, in fantasy, the pace of play, because sometimes that pace of play can help mask potential inefficiencies, right? If you're just getting off more plays, it can help hide that. I will say, when I dug into the numbers on Tyler Shuck from last year, like, we remember some of the highs, right? Like, he had a couple of 20-point fantasy games, which if that's your spike week at a quarterback, like, that's awesome, especially for a guy that's going later. But the efficiency marks were all, I think, somewhat middling, if we're being honest. Like, among quarterbacks that had 8+ games played, he was 13th in YPA. It's pretty good. 10th in completion rate, we'll take that. But he was 19th in passer rating. He was 25th in adjusted net yards per attempt. He was 24th in fantasy points per dropback, tied with guys like Aaron Rodgers and CJ Stroud. So I just think we need to be a little bit careful about saying that this is definitely going to happen. Now, there are reasons for optimism, right? We loved Jordan Tyson. They took him an 8th overall pick. You have 2 legit playmakers at wide receiver now with Olave. Travis Etienne or Achane is really good as a explosive weapon out of the backfield. The line should be healthier. They have a pretty solid ranking in Warren Sharp's unit grades at 16, and they have the strength of schedule. On the downside case, we've done this so many times, haven't we, with quarterbacks that have a small sample size, and we just say, oh, it'll definitely get better in year 2. We've been waiting for CJ Stroud to bounce back to rookie year CJ Stroud, right? It kind of never happened. That's one of those that just hurts because it burnt so bright. But there is a world that exists where like Tyler Shuck as a prospect wasn't very good, right? If we're being honest. We had a small sample size where things kind of clicked, and now we just assume it will work. But doing the research, I was like, man, I think I need to cool off a little just because I have so much. And then maybe as a result, cool off on Olave and Jordan Tyson, just because this is a 27-year-old quarterback. You know, thinking about like players that can really grow and ascend in the NFL, it's generally speaking the guys that enter young that are highly touted draft picks. It's possible the ceiling outcomes for Tyler Shuck aren't really the same as somebody like a Caleb Williams, which should shock nobody, obviously. So I just wanted to point it out. You know, the New Orleans is 24th in average team total. That's just below the Giants and the Steelers. So I do feel like maybe the fantasy market is not in line with where Vegas is, which is always a scary proposition.
I think that's a good tempered approach because we've been so hot on Shuck to at least like bring in this other side that we can counter in. Because if you look at the offense, I think what we remember is down the stretch, how he's really, really good for fantasy, how he ran the ball. But the offense was like fine. It wasn't like elite. So with Spencer Rattler, they were 29th in points per game. They were 32nd EPA per play. So we could just say point blank, they were really bad under Spencer Rattler. With Shuck, they were 22nd and 25th in EPA per play. So it was like, it's good. It's fine. And the thing that really helped them is these explosive pass plays that really worked down the stretch. You saw Olave have some big games, and Shuck was number 1 in the league in completion percentage in the intermediate area of the field. I love that statistic, and you've heard me bring that up for years, but like there's also the other side of that where I know that explosive pass rate and deep pass rate is one of the least sticky statistics year over year. And if we have this, how many games did he end up starting? 8?
8.
That's just not a huge sample size to say he was really good at this, and therefore he will be good at it moving forward. And I just look at their team. Olave, Achane, still hard to say, and Tyson are going really in the first 5-ish rounds. And then Shuck shows up at pick 123. After that, man, it is so thin with the rest of the roster. So like you're really counting on those 3 guys to come through if you're looking at a team stack. And I'm like not putting my chips anywhere else. Like I'm not drafting Devon Vele. I haven't drafted Alvin Kamara. I don't mind Juwan Johnson as like a tight end 3. But I just feel like the team's thinner than I want them to be.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And before somebody's screaming at their phone right now. He had 9 starts, so I missed.
Dang it!
We are idiots.
Okay, so we like Tyler Shuck. I think we're also just building in right now the outcome where he's fine, or you know he's not like this franchise answer in the sense of like this guy's gonna be a generational fantasy quarterback.
And the way I'll frame it too is like if he was like 2 rounds cheaper, I think he'd be such a good pick. But he kind of goes like pretty close to a bunch of other quarterbacks that I want exposure to, and that's really what it is. You know, like we talked a lot about Kyler and Jared Goff and Bo Nix. Like I just think sometimes these prices are really honestly what matters the most in fantasy, and he got steamed up there a little bit. We'll see where it settles come August, but I want to, after doing this research, just pull back I think a little bit.
All right, let's talk about the Titans really quickly because they are a team that we've talked about a lot. Like the first 2 teams, Saints, Titans, probably not the sexiest names that you're going to see for fantasy football, but you and I have been pretty bullish on them. The question I have is Brian Daboll, new offensive coordinator. Can he unlock Cam Ward for year 2? So really we're the first 2 guys, year 2 questions and year 2 leaps.
Well, let's just state this from the jump. Cam Ward was abysmal last year. There are 37 quarterbacks who had 200 plus plays in 2025. Cam Ward ranked 36th in EPA per play, 36th in success rate, 36th in yards per attempt, 33rd in completion rate over expected, and 37th, aka dead last, in fantasy points per dropback. So the truth is, it can only get better from here because he was basically the worst at everything. But as we talked about, Brian Callahan had stood no chance. Mike McCoy came in, stood no chance. Now you at least get a coach that I think around the league people respect, Robert Saleh, and Brian Daboll has had success offensively. So a lot of us are saying, okay, if you kind of like wipe away some of that stuff from year 1 and put good pieces around him, obviously to upgrade the weapons, then there's an outcome for a ceiling here. I don't know what that even is though, if I'm being honest. Like, let's say Cam Ward does take a step forward. Does he turn into like the 20th best quarterback in the league, the 15th best quarterback in the league? What does that get you in best ball and fantasy? So I thought he was a really fun pick early on, and I still think he's a fine quarterback 3 for best ball. But he has come up in price. And again, kind of like the Tyler Shuck discussion, because of the stacking nature of best ball, sometimes he gets pushed up a little bit further if somebody has drafted Wandale or Carnell Tate, for example. And so I just want to be mindful of the cost on a guy like this, that it literally was horrendous as a rookie. You can explain a lot of that away, but the track record of these guys that do what Cam Ward did in year one, they might turn into serviceable starters in the NFL. Rarely do they become fantasy difference makers right away. And I think that's just the conversation here is like, what ceiling could we get? I do want to note, however, like Brian Daboll's quarterbacks, no matter where he's been, have used their legs from a mobility standpoint. That was not part of Cam Ward's rushing profile necessarily coming out of school, and he didn't really run that much last year. He only averaged like just over 9 yards per game, basically nothing. But if you kind of go back through, like, yes, it was Josh Allen, who is going to run no matter what. And he had Jalen Hurts at Alabama. But like even Daniel Jones, right? Like Daniel Jones didn't really run that much last year, even before injury. With Brian Daboll, he was running a ton. Jackson Dart, we saw what he did with his legs. Russell Wilson in the first 3 weeks of the year was averaging like 50 rushing yards a game. So I just want to leave my mind open to the idea that that could be part of Cam Ward's arsenal this year if that is a Brian Daboll thing. But again, we need to be careful copying and pasting because you're not going to get Josh Allen production with his legs, obviously.
Are you still drafting the Titans pass catchers? Because I still have Carnell Tate pretty high up in my exposures. He's going at the end of the 5th round. Like, I still don't mind the price. And Daboll's kind of hyper-targeted his dudes. If you're the wide receiver 1, he's been hyper-targeting them. So are you interested in him, Wandale, even Gunnar Helmsley?
I think it's just what you need at those ranges of the draft. Like, if you went running back early, Wandale is a pretty appealing target in drafts. If you went wide receiver early, I'm not sure Wandale might add much to your roster. If you went 4 wide receivers to the first 5 or 6 rounds. So I think it's just kind of what your team needs. I'm always going to be in on a top 5 draft pick, especially because it kind of feels like we get him at a little bit of a reduced cost relative to the normal top 5 draft picks. Like, think about where Marv went as a rookie and where Neighbors went as a rookie. Like, Wandale, will fall sometimes to the 6th round, and it's like, okay, let's just blindly bet on the talent profile and draft.
You talking about Tate?
Draft. Who did I say? Wandale?
Yeah, but hey, Wandale could be the wide receiver 1.
I am talking about Carnell Tate. Yes, with draft capital, just betting on that guy in best ball where he goes. Maybe too cheap, but I don't want to get outside exposure here just because, like I said, I do think there is a world that exists where it's better, but not like meaningfully better, and that you had to have these guys.
Yeah, I think it would be a win if Cam Ward, like just in terms of win rate, he's QB 22 right now, for your team if he ends up as a top 15 quarterback. Like that's a massive leap. I think it's really hard for me to get into top 10 territory because what's he going to top out at, like 300 rushing yards?
Probably.
And even that like feels like tough to
even
get
that
there.
would be a projection.
Yes. But QB 15 for where you're drafting him, I think we're still bullish overall of just the scheme upgrade for this team because it was not a serious organization last year at all.
Yeah, which ironically, Netflix Quarterback just came out with Cam Ward.
Right.
And there's some things in there that you're like, oh yeah, I forgot how bad this was.
Yeah, I was looking at their drive rates. They were 30th in 3 and outs, 31st in first downs, and 32nd in percentage of drives to reach the red zone. So it was just like every drive just didn't go anywhere. And then the last little kind of scheme trend is they had the highest rate of 11 personnel in the NFL. You might think, wow, that's really, really good for the offense. They were 4th in pass rate. But because they were so inefficient, they were 31st in EPA per play, it almost just didn't matter that they were running 3 wide receivers out there. And the player that I think gets squeezed out the most is Chimere Dike, who is a really, really good player, and I think could be a really good wide receiver 3. I don't even know how many snaps he's going to get this year.
No, I mean, he quietly set the all-time record for all-purpose yards.
Yes,
because of his electric, ability in the return game. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, there's a world I think that exists where Ridley might be kind of over the hill, and yeah, maybe he can work onto the field.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll talk through some more teams.
Now, at McDonald's, wake up to a $4 breakfast meal deal. Wake up to a sausage McMuffin or a sausage biscuit, to hash browns, and wake up to a hot coffee. Get your $4 breakfast meal deal.
Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher for delivery.
I want to grow the game of soccer and give every kid the chance to play. What would you like the power to do?
Bank of America champion street soccer advocate Kyle Martino and is proud to be the official bank of U.S. Soccer and FIFA World Cup 2026. Bank of America N.A., member FDIC.
All right, we are back. We're going to keep going through some teams to monitor through training camp, and I'm going to start off with a dirty question right here. I feel almost bad asking you it, but there are people out there that need to know this answer. It's about the Jets, and it's simply, can Geno Smith support Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall? Because that's what we really care about. If it's like those two guys aren't lifted up, then what are we doing?
Yeah, and some people are, into Kenyon Sadiq late because of just like, hey, maybe he peaks in the last 8 weeks of the season type of thing, or Omar Cooper Jr. A.D. Mitchell's gotten a ton of hype this summer so far. What could possibly go wrong? But kind of like Cam Ward, like point blank, was a disaster last year. Geno was horrendous. 38 quarterbacks qualified, and Geno was 25th in YPA, 33rd in passer rating, 35th in adjusted net yards per attempt, and he was dead last in pressure to sack ratio and interceptions thrown. You look at the contract, he's on a vet minimum with the Raiders paying most of his salary. The Jets are so clearly looking ahead to 2027. My questioning and kind of bringing this up is like, I don't think anybody is expecting Geno to be good to great. Like, he had some really surprising, awesome seasons in Seattle. If we get that, that's like the 97th percentile outcome. What I'm asking is like, can the Jets be competitive enough and good enough to win like 8 games, 7 games this year, and keep him under center so that the coaching staff is like fighting for their job? Because if this thing goes south real quick, I don't think anybody would be surprised if it's like week 5 and Aaron Glenn is the first coach fired, right? Or Frank Reich is the first offensive coordinator fired. So I think the floor here is insanely low. My question is just like, where is Geno at in his career? Is he done? Because, I mean, he's changing teams again. There wasn't much interest in the open market. I suspect there will be next to no interest next year in the open market unless he miraculously turns it around. But now you look at the coordinator and it's like, man, Frank Reich is 64 years old. And Frank Reich had some good NFL seasons under his belt years ago with, Andrew Luck and some years in Philadelphia where they were successful. But he's the oldest offensive coordinator in the league. He does not use much play action or motion. And when I think about Geno Smith, I think he needs that, man. Like, I think he desperately needs that to kind of bounce back here. And this is an offensive coordinator who last year was the interim coach at Stanford. So it's like, I don't know that he's learned much of the like new age NFL type stuff.
Poor guy, just behind.
I'm sorry, man. The NFL passes these guys by, right? We saw it with Doug Peterson.
He's
the
using
NFL
Windows 98.
Nothing wrong. Great program. Uses Windows 98. And so maybe it doesn't matter if they get enough volume, right? If Garrett Wilson gets enough volume, if Breece gets enough volume. My question there is like, even if they get volume, we've seen that with Garrett Wilson throughout his career. He's always gotten volume. But has it ever felt like you needed Garrett Wilson in fantasy or best ball to be the guy that you had to have that season? And I look at where these guys go, like, there's, I think, league-winning wide receiver profiles in the 3rd round this year. We're going to talk about some of those guys. Breece goes right next to those guys. Like, how many touchdowns is Breece Hall scoring this year? Garrett Wilson, sure, he could push for a 30% target share again because it's just what he does. But he has 11 total red zone touchdowns in 4 seasons. Like, I don't know. When I went through it, I was way more pessimistic about those 2 guys in particular. I know volume is what we chase in this game, but just thinking about like the range of outcomes, the floor here, especially in December, if they want to get a look at Cade Klubnik with interim head coaches and interim play callers.
My boy Cade.
Be careful attaching yourself to Cade Klubnik. It could go south insanely quick, is all I'll say.
I mean, in best ball, we are looking for players that can do something at whatever cost I'm drafting them at. So I know the name Breece Hall carries its own aura of like, here's what he can do. We've seen him do this before. We've seen him be a top 5 back. And we're not questioning if he's talented enough. But then you kind of ask yourself around RB14, who else can do this? Same thing with Garrett Wilson at wide receiver 20. And I'm going to give you a statistic, and it's really sad, and I really think that it could repeat this next year. That's the worst part about it. The Jets have been last in plays inside the 5 for the 3rd year in a row. In 2023, they had 3 rush attempts inside the 5. 3 for the whole season. 2024, they had 10. Last year, they had 9. To give you some context, The Jaguars ran the ball 9 times inside the 5 in week 9 alone, in 1 week, and the Jets did it for the entire season. It would not shock me if this team ended up in the same exact situation where you're looking at drives that aren't sustained, because this is not a serious organization. They hired an old white guy without motion. That's not what you want. I just,
Poor Frank Reich, man.
The most likely scenario is that this doesn't work out well, right?
I think there's a possibility these guys give you enough usable weeks. But if you're playing in a tournament and you need your players to give you outlier right tail outcomes, it's hard to paint that picture with the Jets at a 5.5 win total, and only the Cardinals have a lower average team total based off look-ahead lines than the Jets. So doing the research on this and kind of just thinking through it more, I bumped those guys down in the ranks.
All right, let me just for those at home that are like, oh man, I got the playoff Jets. Like, let's just say that that's what you want. You have week 14 is Denver at Arizona in week 15. That's kind of interesting. New England and Minnesota in those last 2 weeks for playoffs. It's fine. If you want to pair some of those, I totally get it. But I just think like you are trying to thread a needle with a team that you don't really need to. So I'm lowering my exposures on the Jets. I like Garrett Wilson. I've always been a big believer. I don't mind Sadiq late, and then I don't really have anyone else.
Same.
Which is sad. It's sad that we're still at this point with this team. All right, I want to move to wide receivers. I want to focus in on wide receivers and depth charts, because we are kind of playing this game in best ball where I look at a team and I say, ooh, I don't really know who the wide receiver 1 or I don't really know who the wide receiver 2 is. I'm going to make a stance on this. And the team that I feel like has gotten some of the most discussion has been the Colts. And it's either Josh Downs or Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce got the bag. Josh Downs is in the final year of his contract, and we've never really seen him. So can Josh Downs play in 2 wide receiver sets? And then the other question is, Alec Pierce, is he actually healthy? And I say this because I need you to talk to Andy about this.
Dude, he's in on Alec Pierce no matter what happens in training camp. And I want to see where he's at in his progress, right? Because the initial reporting was like, oh, it'll be like 2 to 3 months. And then they're like, well, it's 4 to 6. And now they're like, he'll be ready at some point in camp. I think he's starting training camp, not regular season, training camp on PUP. When that news comes through, you will continue to see Alec Pierce drop. So if you are an Alec Pierce believer and you think you're going to get a better price, I agree. I think you probably will. So I haven't taken much Alec Pierce, and it's not because I don't think he's a good archetype for best ball with those spike weeks. It's just that I think we're going to get a much better price in like 2 or 3 weeks. But to lay the outline here, like you said, he got paid. Josh Downs has been a slot-only receiver in the NFL, and Michael Pittman is vacating a 21% target share. Naturally, you think, okay, maybe they're going to get somebody else on the field. And then you look at the depth chart. There is nobody else to put on the field, right? It's Nick Westbrook-Akine, Ashton Doolin, Deion Burks, Laquan Treadwell is on this roster currently. There are rumblings of Keenan Allen potentially joining this team with Shane Steichen. So just keep that in the back of your mind. But the biggest question we're all trying to figure out is, like, can Josh Downs be an every down type of wide receiver? He hasn't been. But when he's been on the field and when the opportunity has presented itself, he has earned a ton of targets. So I still am relatively bullish on his outlook, especially considering the Alec Pierce health situation. But Alec Pierce has never commanded volume anywhere he has played, whether it's in the NFL or in college. His best season basically was 50 catches in college, which as a senior, which not saying that players can't develop. Obviously, Pierce has developed a lot since then, but it's going to take a leap of faith to be like, oh, they paid him to be a 30% target share guy. It'd take a huge, huge projection. When I went through this, I was like, man, are we just like blind spot here? Is Tyler Warren just the answer? Like we're going to spend all summer being like, Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, who is the other guy? I think this offense could flow through Tyler Warren way more than the market thinks. So I've been a Josh Downs guy. I'll take some Alec Pierce when his price falls, but doing this was like, man, I need to get some more Tyler Warren.
I love it. You know that I'm on board. I would be very happy to think, talk, discuss, dwell on Tyler Warren most days of my life. I just love him as a player. What's weird about this offense, you look at ADP, and we have some of this in the best ball primer, is like the team's pretty condensed. There are only 5 players being drafted from this team. You go through other teams where we have really ambiguous situations and we're like, man, there's 3 or 4 wide receivers. I don't know which one is the 2, 3, or 4. It's Jonathan Taylor going in the first round, Tyler Warren, who's going in the 6th round, which I think is kind of egregious, and then Pierce Downs, and then Daniel Jones is kind of in no man's land. But that's it. Like, nobody else is taking shots on any of the other guys, and personally, like, I'm doing the same thing. I'm not trying to go after Westbrook Akine or any of these other dudes. So I say that to say it's a condensed team, and I get why somebody would take Alec Pierce because he's not priced up enough where somebody's anticipating a breakout at wide receiver 38. But Josh Downs is also so far down on the list at wide receiver 43 that you can take shots. So my course of action is just saying I have a ton of Warren. I've been taking more Downs than Pierce, but I'm actually okay with all 3 of them at cost.
Yeah, and like I said, I think you're going to get a better price on Alec Pierce too. So if you're somebody out there that hasn't had much of him and you do want to get some exposure, when the news starts that he's limited in camp or whatever, you'll get a better price. You'll be able to probably get him wide receiver like 45, in 2 or 3 weeks. So don't feel bad about waiting. I was just in a draft the other night on DK. He fell to pick 100 over there. So people are definitely looking at that Q tag, and he is falling.
All right, this is the portion of our broadcast where we bring up the Chargers because
we have to.
I couldn't imagine not to. The simple question is, who is going to be playing in 2 wide receiver sets? Because we know Mike McDaniel runs a lot of stuff with 21 personnel with a fullback on the field. We're probably going to see a lot more tight ends. Like, how is this going to work out? I'm very curious on a number of levels.
You and me both, brother. You and me both. Yeah, and if you look at their offseason moves, like, we should expect a similar trend here as far as what the personnel looks like. He brought Alec Ingold over with him from Miami. They signed Charlie Kolar. They signed David Njoku. They signed Keaton Mitchell. And more importantly, they did not re-sign franchise legend Keenan Allen. Do you think they're going to?
I don't know. I feel happy
because
whenever
that would change a lot.
My heart is happy for Keenan whenever he does.
Okay. But if you look at their moves, like, they're not a team like the Jaguars who, like, have the horses to run 3 wide if they really want to, right? So the question is, like, okay, well, if they do run more of the stuff that McDaniel did in Miami, who benefits? I think you can pay a pretty compelling upside case for both Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston. The problem is both guys have had limited playing time at 2 wide receiver sets. You look at the last 2 years, Ladd has run 53 and 71 total routes with 2 wide receivers or fewer on the field. Quentin Johnston kind of quietly has only run 50 and 73. So it's basically been the same, which is a scheme-related thing, in my opinion, not necessarily a personnel issue. So my question is, like, if we get this scheme and we think Herbert is going to spike in efficiency, who is the biggest beneficiary? I know Quentin Johnston is a fun, exciting type of upside pick. He has gotten insanely expensive in best ball. Like, he opened at like pick 100, and I was like, man, this is a great price. Now I see him routinely go in like the early 7th, sometimes late 6th. That's a little bit more of a tough sell for me, just given his lack of like volume that we've seen. And yes, it should spike if there's less wide receivers on the field. But man, like, you look at his splits from last year, he got off to a great start. He averaged less than 40 yards a game from like week 7 on. So we're doing a lot of projection here on Quentin Johnston, and I'm not sure I'm with the market in that. I still think Ladd McConkey has that league-winning upside potential, but the problem with Ladd is he goes around so many other awesome picks. Like,
he's priced as if it's almost going to happen.
For sure. And like, I want to take shots on Ibuka and Flowers and the Bears pass catchers, and it's like, man, that's why I like all these picks. And so I don't want to get so take clock on one of these wide receivers in this range, but I do think Ladd you should have exposure to in the event that he is kind of one of these JSN-esque type breakouts. Obviously, nobody's doing what JSN did last year, but that type of efficiency boost, I think it's possible with Ladd. I will say I'm a little worried on the price on Quentin Johnston.
What's interesting about the usage for Mike McDaniel, we brought up the fullback, which is almost an irrelevant point for 95% of the NFL, except that it is the personnel that travels the most. JJ Zachariason, they just did some work at late round, and they just talked about, like, of all the personnel groups that travel with coordinators changing teams, is 21 personnel that travels the most. And the fact that they signed the fullback Allen Ingold says that that's going to happen. So I've seen it as a boost for Marion Hampton and just the run game in general. And then Ladd, I think that the price you're paying for Huge, like you mentioned, is very different than the what we were paying. Like we were paying wide receiver 56 or whatever it was before, and now it's kind of baked in that he's going to score the touchdowns and be the dude. So I think I'm with you there. Let's go to the Packers. A similar question mark about how this team's going to work wide receiver room. And do we get the routes to finally condense? We don't have these Dontavian Wicks routes anymore. Romeo Doubs is gone. So where do you see these routes going?
Yeah, Dobbs led the wide receiver room in routes run last year. And, just because you're on the field doesn't mean you're insanely valuable for fantasy. But when you look at kind of who's potentially going to replace him, Christian Watson, Matthew Golden, and Jaden Reed, there's big-time spike week potential here if we get the right run out. And you look behind those guys, behind those three wide receivers. I mean, they have Sky Moore, a gadgety type guy in Savion Williams, Bill Melton, players I've never even heard of. I'm learning names doing this research. So, if the wide receiver routes actually condense for the first time in the last, 5 years, I think Christian Watson and Jaden Reed and Matthew Golden are all really good picks. So I came into this being I want to have the right answer here. I know which one it is. I don't know which one it is. And so I am taking swings on all three guys and kind of hoping that we see this Jordan Love efficiency continue. And I also think with Josh Jacobs, we're still waiting on some of the legal stuff, but he is kind of entering the part of his career where you start to question if he's still in his prime and the inefficiencies and played through injury last year and some of that stuff. We've been waiting for Matt LaFleur to kind of open it up with Jordan Love. They haven't. If that happens this year, and it does take a leap of faith, but if that happens this year, I think all three of these wide receivers in Watson, Reed, and Golden are good bets at the relative costs.
Jordan Love continues to be one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the league, and yet he's never going to see crazy volume. So it is a play on, this is a Watson week, this is a Reed week, this is the week where Golden goes off. So I think they are built for best ball. I think it will be kind of frustrating in redraft, where there will be weeks where you're like, man, why did Christian Watson see 4 targets? Or Jaden Reed was the one who got the long touchdown, and then they gave an end around. So it's I think the team will be frustrating. Jordan Love last year was first in EPA in a clean pocket, 6th in passer rating, 7th in completion percentage over expectation. He was really good, but the offensive line has kind of dipped a bit. So I think there is a chance where some of the efficiency comes down from where it's been, but you might see at least, they were 28th in pass rate last year. Let's get to 20th, and at least you're getting a little bit more pass attempts to kind of go around the room. So at the end of the day, I'm fine with this team at cost and the wide receivers that are built for best ball, but I still think they're going to be frustrating.
And I think to your point there on the pass rate, let's say if, hypothetically speaking, Christian Watson gets injured.
What?
Are they going to be well, Christian Watson's out this week and Tucker Kraft is still slow off an ACL, so let's just load up this, wide receiver room that doesn't exist with volume? I'd be very surprised by that. So you do need an efficiency run out. I agree with you on that. But like I said, with the route numbers just condensing on these guys, I think they're all upside bets.
All right, last little wide receiver room we need to break down is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. With Mike Evans gone, the question is, where does everybody slot in, and what does Emeka Egbuka's role look like with Mike Evans gone?
Rookie sensation, wide receiver out of Ohio State, Emeka Egbuka.
It was at that moment on the Fox postgame show that Emeka Egbuka's season was over. Literally from that moment on, he was terrible. So thanks a lot, Gronk. But I want to point out on Egbuka, if you just zoom out on the season in totality, right? If you just say I don't care about the splits, before and after, the hamstring, yada yada, just give me the numbers for the entire season. This is a first round NFL draft pick. He averaged 1.75 yards per run as a rookie. There's massive opportunity up for grabs. That alone, I think, keeps us interested in being in on him. The issue I have on Egbuka is, again, the guys he goes around. There are so many fun upside, and I think really good best ball picks that I kind of just want to be in line with market, get somewhere around 8 to 10%. But I do think the upside case here is pretty massive if we get a run out where Zach Robinson comes over from Atlanta and kind of does some of this stuff that we've seen with Drake London, where they'll, especially in the red zone, we talked about this a lot in DFS, they'll move him into the slot and he's easily the first read on almost every play. If they can give Egbuka that role, and there is some talk about that. Robinson was also in LA when Cooper Kupp has hit his insane seasons, moving him all over the formation. If he can get that role, and Ted Hurst can run go routes on the outside, and Jalen McMillan can be a downfield threat, and Godwin can kind of soak up some routes here and there. Like, I think the volume upside case here for Ibuka is way higher than I thought it was going to be, and it's mostly just because it's a question mark on Chris Godwin. Like, if Godwin is, I don't know, man, like 70% of what he used to be, is he going to steal targets from an upside year 2 wide receiver player? I'd be surprised. I'm hopeful Chris Godwin bounces back. I've loved the player. It's just that he is at a point now where, like, we did this with like Cooper Kupp, where it was like, he's been so good, but he's had so many injuries, and like it just kind of happened, right?
We didn't want it to happen. That was the hard part. And I hear it in your voice as a former Penn State guy, but you know that it's coming. And I did the same thing with Julio Jones. When it was gone, dude was done, and it was so sad.
Yeah, that was sad. We'll know it's over for Godwin if he goes to Tennessee next year. That's where wide receivers go to be.
That's where they go to die.
But if you haven't mixed in Ibuka in that middle to back of the third round, I think he's a guy you should definitely be mixing in for the upside case.
I think we talked about the Buccaneers earlier this offseason. We were talking about stacks. We talked about value stacks, and I probably threw out the word value 38 times that episode. And Baker's still sitting there at QB 19, where I look at the way the team's constructed and the stackability, and it's like this team's easy to make happen. It's easy to see the route for this team to win the division, to have a bounce back. I know you've talked a little bit, off air about Baker's injury and some of the stuff that's come out. Netflix is like, okay, we knew something was off. I wish he would have told us so we didn't lose our survivor bet at the time, because it hurts a lot. It hurts a lot, Baker. But like, there's things about the team that you can kind of say, here's an improvement going into this next year, and Ibuka can be a part of that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up on Baker. I also think he's a really solid pick. Factoring in a couple of things. One is the offensive line health. I think that'll be much better this year. And then kind of looking at the backfield, like, it's an ambiguous room. We don't know about how much to give to Bucky or Kenny Gainwell or Sean Tucker. But like, I think we're far enough into the Sean Tucker experience that like he's a fun late round pick where you're getting a couple of spike weeks, but he's never had volume in the NFL. And so then you ask yourself, like, are they going to build the plane around a guy who's dealt with big-time injuries this last year and a player who's always been a role player in Kenneth Gainwell? I'd be surprised, right? So I think Baker is one of those sneaky candidates. Talk about that on the award show. Like, this guy could lead the league in passing. I wouldn't be surprised by that.
Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Now at McDonald's, get a $5 McChicken meal deal or a $6 McDouble meal deal. They come with small fries, a soft drink, and 4-piece McNuggets. We're going to need a bigger tray. Get more value with your meal deal.
Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher for delivery.
Soccer teaches us lessons we can take with us long after we leave the field. That's why Bank of America and U.S. Soccer are committed to helping bring soccer to every school. Raise your hand to help at BofA.com/soccer at schools.
All right, we are going to finish up this episode by talking about the running back position, specifically some ambiguous rooms and maybe some players that we're still questioning, like, okay, what's the workload in this situation? The first one is the Vikings, who are not priced very highly. So they seem to be a value. I mean, I'm in drafts all the time. I'm like, man, Jordan Mason, I could take him here. Aaron Jones, like, it's never the sexiest click, but they're always there, past pick 100. And what's interesting about the Vikings, and I've noticed this, is that, what was this, a week ago, we got a little news blurb from Matthew Kohler, who actually is a legit Minnesota insider. He also wrote the book on PFF, The Numbers Game, which was a great read. So he's a legit
insider.
Shocking
that you'd say that.
It was really cool. I liked it. He never mentioned me in the book, though.
He never mentioned PFF Kyle?
He did not. I guess he never, I don't know. I guess he doesn't associate me. But anyway, he put out this blurb about this being Jordan Mason's backfield, and we've seen the ADPs flip from Jones, who was going ahead of him for really this entire cycle, to now Jordan Mason going ahead of him. Where are you at on that situation?
I don't even know if I would call that a news blurb.
It was more of an opinion.
And in this part of the calendar before training camp started, it was like, we need anything to talk about. And so people saw that, and ADP actually moved off of that quote where he said, this is Jordan Mason's backfield, and Aaron Jones will mainly spell him and eat into pass downs.
I want to pause there, because one of your job, people don't know this, but one of Betz's jobs for the footballers is he puts together any news items that are there for the main show. So Betz kind of puts in any injury updates. He's in charge of the news blurbs. Please tell people what it has been like for the last 2 to 3 weeks about putting in news. Like, you almost feel bad, don't you?
We just skip it every episode because there is nothing to talk about until we actually get into training camp. The headlines of the last 3 weeks, I would say, have been Brandon Ayuk on social media. And this quote about Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason, there's been nothing else. And so when people saw this, ADP actually moved. And I don't know if that's wrong or right. I don't know that it matters. You know what I mean?
I agree.
And so I would be careful of taking this as fact, of saying you have to draft Jordan Mason first. You have to be in on that guy. Now, I will say it's totally possible that Jordan Mason is the better pick this year because Aaron Jones is at the age where you're like, man, is it over? Dealing with injuries again. He's not the same player he used to be in Green Bay, clearly. But at the same time, Jordan Mason is a very specific archetype, right? He's never been a pass catcher. You need him to score touchdowns. And we've talked a lot about, Kyler in that whole situation. I'd be more willing to play this through the pass game in Minnesota than I am through the running backs. That said, if you need a running back, let's say you went RB start and you didn't take your RB3 till the Vikings guys, I'm fine, getting some exposure here to both guys. I will just say there's reason to be cautious about using this quote as a fact, is what I would say. Let's wait till we get into camp and get more news.
Yes, we are on the exact same page here. And I just want to give you a little bit of numbers. I know last year felt like a wasted year with the Vikings and JJ McCarthy and how it functioned. But when Aaron Jones returns, remember he was hurt for part of the beginning of the year. When he returned from week 8 on, he averaged 16 opportunities per game. Mason only averaged 8. So there's a big difference in workload. But the target pace is what was wild. From week 8 on, Aaron Jones had a 63 target pace, so over 17 games. Jordan Mason had an 8.5 target pace. It's kind of clear how they view him in the passing game. And Kyler's running backs have averaged 19% market share since he came in the league. That's almost a top 10 mark. So I think I'd just rather side with a player who I think is better in that regard and scores more points and seems to be more efficient and has been more efficient his entire career. I could see Mason still getting the goal line carries and whatnot, but this is a great example. I love that we got to point it out of here's a news item that's not really a news item, and the best ball community has reacted.
Yeah, that's because we're all thirsty for something right now.
Yes,
we'll get it soon. We'll get it soon, but this is not the quote that I would personally move rankings on.
All right, moving on to the Jaguars with Travis Etienne Jr. now out of town. How will the running back touches be distributed this year?
Yeah, there's been a lot of people suggesting it's going to be some sort of committee. Is that 50-50? Is that 60-40 with Tootin and Rodriguez? How much does LaQuint Allen play on pass downs? Those are all things we need to look at in camp. We also need to monitor Chris Rodriguez off of his foot procedure. He has not done anything this offseason because of an early spring foot injury. So we'll see where he's at health-wise when we get into camp. But I was going through this and I was like, man, this is really unfortunate. The best ball market and fantasy in general has gotten way sharper over the last couple of years. The Byshal Tootin bet, if we had a disappointing rookie season, ambiguous, this 3 or 4 years ago would have been a 9th round pick. Now he goes in the 5th round. And it's man, the opportunity cost here is massive for Tootin. That said, I still want to be really in on a player where the upside case is very, very real. I know that last year, the correct answer in this ambiguous situation was Achane. But if you go back, and kind of look at these guys in totality, one is a potentially upside player in Tootin in his second season. We know historically the most touches year over year for running backs that happens is year 1 to year 2. So Tootin checks that box. He has the athletic profile, ran 4.32 in the 40-yard dash, 97th percentile speed score. And perhaps most importantly to me, he does have a legit pass catching role. Coming out of Virginia Tech, he had reception shares of 13% and 11.5%. And anything above 10%, generally speaking, is a really, really good mark in college. So he checks those boxes. It's man, are we going to fade that and be worried about Chris Rodriguez, who, no disrespect to Crod, but is now 26 years old, was a UDFA, played 5 years in college, and in his college seasons, across 5 of them, caught 20 total passes in 3 years in the league, has caught 6 total passes. So if there is a massive upside hit here for me, I think it's probably going to be Byshal Tootin. And I think a lot of people will say, well, Crod, he has this familiarity with Liam Cohen. They were together in Kentucky. He's definitely going to be the goal line role. I don't know about that, man. Like, they used Baishal Tutin a lot at the goal line last year. And he was very good, converted 5 of his 7 attempts inside the 5-yard line into a touchdown. So he already had success doing it. We have proof of concept of them trusting him as a rookie to do it. I think Baishal Tutin is one of those guys that, yes, the floor is low if it doesn't work out. But if you're thinking about the upside case here, Baishal Tutin's kind of staring us in the face.
He's RB25 right now. And I actually was going in a direction of looking at him and just saying, like, I feel like the ceiling is sky high. And I don't see a scenario where Chris Rodriguez takes over the backfield. Like, if anything, it ends up being some type of split, and maybe Chris Rodriguez is better inside the 5, but like, he has the role that we want. And regardless of what you think and how you think it should shake out, like, we want to bet on players that have this type of profile, like, just from every single angle, breaking tackles, all those things. And this team's moves this year were kind of weird. Like, we've kind of been making fun. I've been making fun of James Gladstone behind the scenes because his quotes, if you've seen some of their stuff behind the scenes, has been kind of fart sniffy, kind of we're the smartest guy in the room. I don't
fart sniffy.
I don't love it. But what they basically said is we're going to run a lot more 12 personnel, right? Like, when they take Nate Borkacher, at 56 overall, they've talked about wanting to do that. Their GM talked about doing it. They only did it 18% of their plays last year. And I think they want to do that more. I did a little research, Betz, about Baishal Tutin in limited snaps and how he did with 2 tight ends in the field. He was 9th best among all running backs in rush success rate. And he had as many rushing touchdowns with two tight ends in the field as Christian McCaffrey did last year. Fun fact.
Tutin, CMC?
Same guy.
Same guy.
Okay,
why would you draft CMC in the first round when you can just get him in the 5th?
What do you... I'll tell you whose exposure is a lot higher for me, Baishal Tutin and not CMC. What is his ceiling to you? Just be bold, because I know you've always loved the player.
Yeah, I mean, if this breaks right for him, where he gets the vast majority of the touches and the passing down work, and the Jaguars are still a top 10 offense, I think he could finish as like the RB8.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking top 10 in my head, which is...
And to be clear, that's like ceiling
yes,
outcome.
Ceiling
but
outcome.
I think it's possible, and like a lot of people will point to his yards per carry last year, but and this isn't necessarily a bullish point for him where it's like, we didn't get that much work. That's never bullish. But like, of his 83 carries, 25 of them were inside the red zone. So naturally, when you think about some of these carries inside the 10, inside the 5, yeah, you're not going to run for 12 yards a carry, obviously, right? Like, so the stat is skewed. He actually was better than Etienne, in EPA per rush, yards after contact per attempt, and better in success rate. So like I said, yes, this profile has burned us in the past. We love to chase up these kind of sexy picks, but I do think the upside case is there, and it's just staring us in the face in an ambiguous room. Kind of feels like a guy you want to take shots on.
All right, we're going to do a little rapid round here of some other workload questions to finish out the episode. Let's go with the Rams and their backfield. Do you feel like we're going to have another year where we're guessing, is this a 50-50 timeshare between Kyren and Blake Corum?
Another season, another time where we just talk about the speculation on the backfield. I kind of buy it, but at the same time, I'm not sure it totally matters. And what I mean by that is, like, Kyren last year dominated looks inside the 10-yard line, 30-16. He also out-targeted Corum 50-14. When you think about what matters for our game, it's those green zone opportunities, right? Get the ball close to the goal line and catch the football. And that does not necessarily profile to be a huge part of Corum's game, especially in the pass down work. So I think both guys are totally fine where they go. Corum is probably one of, if not the most valuable RB2s, because if Kyren does go down, I do think Sean McVay would like give him literally everything. So I'm taking both guys, but Kyren just feels like a boring pick every year, and he always performs. So I'm taking him too.
It's weird how these running backs have been fairly inefficient, and Matthew Stafford doesn't throw to the running back as much as I think you want for somebody who's been a routine top 10 back. So that one kind of always, like, in the back of my mind, if I'm going to fade Kyren, I'm like, okay, it's the pass catching profile. It's never been elite. He has these inefficiencies. And yet last year, they were kind of hyper efficient of just getting those, 5-yard chunk gains over and over and over again. That's really hard to say this is going to regress. Something's up with the Rams. I was talking to Julia, our editor, about this, of like, going through the Rams team preview. It's like, okay, so they have the 5th hardest schedule according to Warren Sharp, but they're favored in all but one game. I feel like that's wrong. I feel like that will shift over time. Like, to be favored in 16 of 17 games feels off.
Well, they have an MVP at quarterback.
I get
one
why.
of the, if not the best wide receivers. They've got one of the best coaches and play callers. They just traded for Myles Garrett. They're probably getting Aaron Donald back. They made huge improvements in the secondary. Like, this is an awesome team, but we did take their under. No way this goes wrong.
Yeah, definitely. All right, a couple more. David Montgomery, dude's old. Is he a dead zone running back, or will we look up and be like, that was a top 15 running back, and I faded him just because he was old?
Yeah, let's just kind of paint the picture, right? So 29 years old. I would say David Montgomery has been a very good running back. He's not been a Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey level elite player where those guys will age a little more gracefully. So I do think
RB20 right now, by the way.
And like the term dead zone back, to me, like when I think of that, people argue the exact definition, but it's like, generally speaking, older, not super explosive, definitely need volume to pay off, and they get pushed up because you have to have running backs. That feels a lot like David Montgomery, doesn't it? Where he's changing teams, he's 29, but at the same time, when you pop up in the hood and look at the efficiency stuff, like he was 11th in rush yards over expected per attempt last year. He was 17th in yards after contact per attempt, 21st in yards per carry. This is among like 48 running backs. So generally speaking, pretty average across the board. Now, when you think about what the Texans were terrible at last year, scoring inside close to the goal line. They could not run the football to save their life.
Worst
that
in
is
the
not
league.
That is not what Woody Marks does. So I have zero doubts that David Montgomery is going to get goal line touches, and whenever they get in close, it will be David Montgomery. The question is, how many touchdowns can you expect, and how much pass down work does Woody Marks steal? So if you have a 2-down player in David Montgomery, and let's say the Texans are like 20th in the league in scoring, does he get 8 touchdowns? 9? Like what's the best outcome here for David Montgomery where he's a guy that you had to have? That's my thing. Like, I think he could be totally fine, be like a usable RB2 in season long leagues, but in best ball, I do have a tough time seeing him be the piece you needed in that part of the draft.
He feels like he needs to be running back 26 for that archetype to really work. Like, he needs to be like a 6th round pick. And right now he is priced up where now he's going inside the top 4 rounds.
Would you prefer Bishal Tootin?
I would.
Straight up?
Yes, at a lower cost, for sure.
Yeah, me too.
It's wild to be able to say that because I see the route and I understand why the Texans did it. So like it's not crazy at all. I just think he's now priced up where he's like going ahead of where he's going in redraft circles.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. All right, let's do one more. Let's finish this episode by talking about Kenneth Walker because it's a fun ride if you've been on the Ken Bone train. The problem is the dude has never really finished a whole season, and he's never really finished as an elite performer. He's had little spurts, he's had games, and I would argue of all the running backs in football, he's probably the most boom-bust runner there is, where it's like Kenneth Walker just broke 7 tackles on that play, and then the next 3, he runs into butts 3 times in a row of his linemen. So the question is, what does him coming to the Kansas City offense mean for Walker? And then more importantly, like, how does it change the team? Because the team was so bad running the ball last year.
Yeah, they've been horrendous at running the football for a while. And you know, they got a lot of credit for being like the bargain shopping team at running back because they weren't spending money, right? They had like Jerick McKinnon types and Damian Williams and Isaiah Pacheco as a 7th rounder. And like they got by because they have one of the best coaches and they've got Pat Mahomes. So like you can do that when you have Mahomes. But when you look at the moves and kind of where this team is at, they have kind of stalled out a little bit, right? Like last year, obviously Mahomes got injured, but like even before the injury, they weren't winning those close games. They were kind of a middling team most of the year. Like, I think Andy Reid might self-scout this thing and be like, look, we cannot keep doing what we're doing. And clearly, they signed Ken Walker and make him the 5th highest paid running back in the league, so it should be different. And I think it will be different. Since 2022, the Chiefs have ranked 8th, 7th, 10th, and 6th in pass rate with Mahomes. Like, they're loading up the offense through Mahomes. Now the problem is he's coming off a multi-ligament injury on his knee. He probably will not be running the way he was last year, which for fantasy was awesome. And then you have still major question marks at pass catcher because Travis Kelce is another year older, and he has set back-to-back seasons in yards per out run as career lows. Clearly not at the right part of his age curve. Xavier Worthy, nobody knows how good this guy even is still a couple years into the league. Oh, is he great?
No. They should have never drafted him in the 1st round. He's not as fast in pads.
It's not working out so far. He did have that stretch with Rice as a rookie where they kind of gave him the gimmicky stuff. But then speaking of that, Rashee Rice has been a volume-dependent player. And I want to note, I don't think the pass rate is going to be the same this year. They've talked about protecting their quarterback and protecting Mahomes, and they signed Ken Walker. And so my question is like, is Rashee Rice's volume as guaranteed as it has been in the past? And people are still drafting him as if that is the case. I've loved Rashee Rice in fantasy. I've been taking him a ton over the last couple of years. This is the first time that I've been like, man, I don't know if I want to do this. He is a career 4.7 yard ADOT. He has to have volume to pay it off. If he doesn't have volume, he will be a huge disappointment. And so it's like, man, this guy was just in jail. He just had to rehab another knee injury. Is he even in the team's long-term plans? Because let's paint a picture. Like, what if the Chiefs are, I don't know, 3 games below 500 and they happen to miss the playoffs by a couple games and it's week 14 and they're eliminated? Like, are they going to keep feeding Rashee Rice the ball? Is he even in the long-term plans? I just think he's way more fragile than he used to be. I could look totally stupid if he just comes out and does what he does, But I think he's one of the scarier clicks where he goes.
I mean, I've been stubbornly here for a long time, but it's mostly what he has to do as an after-the-catch player is really hard to stay consistent that way unless you are seeing 130 targets. And I think this is a world where it doesn't have to happen. But it is a weird team when you start going to the depth chart and you're like, Worthy's supposed to be a better and best ball player. That's what he's supposed to be for us. He hit 10 points once last year. Like that's really tough. Now, I think that there is a little bit more diversification that can happen with him, but I think Walker's really the only one that I've been buying, and we've been lower on Mahomes. It's like, it's a really hard team despite their expectation, despite being favorites in a ton of games, that I'm like, I have a hard time with this team still.
Yeah, Mahomes is tough. Like, obviously, you just zoom out, you're like, oh, we get a chance to draft Pat Mahomes at like the cheapest price maybe we'll ever draft him. But then I went into the UDK and it's like, man, the consensus projections from the guys from a numbers standpoint, he's quarterback 16. And it's like, I know that we tie our rankings to ADP to some degree because there's power in the market. But like, just seeing that, I was like, are you going to need Mahomes this year?
Yep.
Off an ACL? I don't know.
That's the best way to look at it. Is like, is he somebody that is necessary? And you can paint the picture with Eric Bieniemy that it does revert back, but you don't have Tyreek Hill on this team. And this team has not been explosive in so many different ways. So I think at the end of the day, I cannot use Mahomes' stats from 5 years ago to justify why he's going to do this year. So it's Walker, and we'll see. I mean, they have to replace a ton in the secondary, right? Like they've moved on from some different pieces. They did draft Mansour Delane, 6 overall, but it's a different team. It's a different feeling. And hopefully with Walker there, like he bangs in 12 touchdowns and he's awesome, but you're still guessing with him. At the end of the day, there's a small part of Kenneth Walker you're like, oh my gosh, am I going to do this again? Am I going to really do this to myself?
There's no way this goes south. There's no way.
Yeah.
No way, Kyle.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Make sure you head to fantasyfootballers.com if you want all 32 teams of Betz' short novel that he wrote. Put a lot of love and time and effort, and I will be in Vegas next week. So Betz, sign us off.
Kyle's going to be partying in Vegas with the Backstreet Boys. Meanwhile, I will be on the show working, Kyle. Okay? People do that around here sometimes. With Chris Cash, it'll be very exciting DraftKings specific episode next week for best ball. So if you have questions for us on DraftKings, hit us up in Discord, find us on Twitter, let us know. We'll be back next week with Cash. We'll see you then. Have a good week.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at thefantasyfootballers.com.
Now at McDonald's, get a $5 McChicken meal deal or a $6 McDouble meal deal. They come with small fries, a soft drink, and 4-piece McNuggets. We're going to need a bigger tray. Get more value with your meal deal.
Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher for delivery.
Good morning, students. Soccer teaches us teamwork, leadership, geometry, art, physics, and a lifetime of lessons we can take with us long after we leave the field. That's why Bank of America and U.S. Soccer are committed to helping bring soccer to every school. Soccer is officially in session. Raise your hand to help bring soccer to schools at BofA.com/soccer at schools.